and the time is 6:31 p.m. Our mission is to provide a safe and caring climate and culture in which we engage, inspire, educate, prepare, and empower all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. Zach, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And then can you please call roll?
Following board members are present at the District Administration Office. Scott Andresen.
Here.
Natalie Copeland.
Here.
Al Dahlgren.
Here.
Zach Dorholt is here. Shannon Haas.
Here.
Monica Shigeru-Swartz.
Here.
Heather Weems.
Here.
The following cabinet members and staff are present at the District Administration Office. Superintendent Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education Dr. Jason Harris, Assistant Superintendent of Pre-K through Grade 5 Education Nikki Hansen, Assistant Superintendent of Special Education and Student Services Shannon Avenson, Executive Director of Community Education Adam Holm, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Human Resources and Labor Relations Tracy Flynn Bowe, Executive Director of Operations Joel Heidkamp, Executive Director of Partnership Programs Gary Ganji, Executive Director of Research, Enrollment and Assessments Donna Roper, Director of Community Engagement and Communications Tammy DeLand, Media Technicians Paul Novak and Gordy Scott, and Custodian on site is Aiden Ensher.
Thank you. Then I'm looking for a motion to approve tonight's Board of Education meeting and work session agenda.
So move.
And do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Scott, a second by Heather. Zach, can you call vote?
Scott Andresen,
Yes.
Natalie Copeland,
Yes.
Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Zach Dorholz, yes. Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Monica Shigeru-Swartz.
Yes.
Heather Weems.
Yes.
Thank you. Then we have the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of non-controversial items that the board adopts routinely without debate. Any single member may remove an item from the consent agenda by requesting removal at the time the consent agenda is moved for adoption. On tonight's consent agenda, item A, approval of personnel staff changes. Item B, approval of monthly treasurer's report for June. Item C, Apollo parking lot change orders totaling $174,195. Item D, McKinley addition and renovation project change orders totaling $7,844.01. And item E, Apollo LTFM improvement change orders totaling $30,702.83. At this time, does any board member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion by Scott, a second by Natalie. Zach, can you call vote?
Zach Dorholz, yes. Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Monica Shigeru-Swartz. Yes. Heather Weems.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Natalie Copeland.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to information items. We have one information item on the agenda tonight is the Midsummer Construction Project Update presented by Joel Heitkamp, Executive Director of Operations. Welcome, Joel.
All right. Good evening, Chair Haas, Superintendent Putnam, and members of the board. It's my pleasure tonight to give you an update to all the fantastic work that's been going on throughout the district over these last, almost 10 weeks now. We'll start with some of our outside things that are easy to see for the community. Westwood Elementary, as you can see, got a brand new playground equipped with a new floor, safe floor as well. Those pictures came directly from FIA teacher Trevor Morrell, who teaches in that building. He was super excited a few weeks ago when he was able to snap those for us. And then we have Catherine Johnson, which we also included the fence on this one, given the nature of that location and to support that space. New playground along with new fencing. At South Junior High, we finished up a project that's actually been about a year in play. When we got our new bus chute, new parking areas, the one piece that we lost was a softball field for our female athletes. And it was the main field that we use for our competitions. And so we worked to convert one of our many baseball fields when Tech moved off of our facility, when they had their own places to play and practice. We converted a baseball field, and the one thing that I learned is that for softball, that fence comes right up to or that backstop comes right up to the edge of the infield there. It has to be closer for a regulation softball field. And so that project was finished up this summer by moving that fence up closer, and now we have a regulation softball field for our athletes at South Junior High. The Apollo tennis courts are absolutely beautiful. The pictures really don't do it justice. Very, very cool with the color scheme. Those were resurfaced, repainted, and are looking great over there. The North Junior High bus chute got a brand new sidewalk, as you can see. Tried to give you a couple different views, one from the entrance and then one from the sidewalk area where students can now also access the two main doors there. And as you can see, there's a few spots that were damaged on the grass, and we have some replanting of that grass to come here soon. We've had the perfect weather for it in the last handful of days, and we've got some more good weather coming up with highs in the 60s and 70s, so won't burn it up anymore. We also replaced an area of sidewalk right outside the window here at the district administrative office. Lots of work at Discovery, and so they kind of got their own page here. We just wrapped up 33 classroom windows. Principal Holm took me on a walk yesterday to show me the finished classrooms. You can see there's two examples there of some classrooms and workspaces that got some new flooring. And then many areas of the bus chute got some new concrete. That was the biggest section there in the bus chute that we're highlighting in that photo. Over at Madison, just one of many examples of some new restroom facelifts that happen over there. There'll be some other ones in some other buildings I'll show here in just a second as well. But some beautiful tile work that happened in many of our sites, and that's one of them there at Madison. And then one of our main points of entry at Madison was also replaced with a better functioning door and replacement of the key card system. Again, another safe entrance there over at Madison. Again, at South Junior High, kind of the culmination of a large facelift that happened in our music areas. A year ago, we did a reface of many of the walls, took down lots of the carpet that was on the walls to use as some noise deafening or noise control that was not looking good anymore. We replaced some areas of the choir room. That's the lower right-hand photo there, replaced some parts of the wall to make that nice, but the one piece that was missing was the replacement of that carpet to help with some of the sound, and so that was one piece that was put back here this summer, and that's all complete. Those pictures are already a few weeks old, so those spaces are put back together and already ready for students. So a really nice finishing product there at South Junior High in those fine arts areas. Over at Westwood, Principal Branton took me on a walk again earlier this week, late last week, and the media center got a full recarpet. The one thing that you'll notice in that picture is the wall doesn't match real well anymore with that color of carpet, and that is also in the plans. So that green wall will be white or a light blue. Principal Branton was still working on that, but that will all be finished prior to students and staff returning here in a few weeks. And then as you can see, again at Westwood, a beautiful remodel and facelift in those restroom areas, and that's just one, again, of many, both in that school and throughout the district. Over at Lincoln, the walls, you can see that beautiful kind of blue lavender color was completed throughout the entirety of the building. The picture on the left, that area had been done last year, and then the hallway on the right was kind of the rest of that project getting wrapped up. And so unified throughout the entire building, all the walls look the same, and it very much ties that project together. They're also doing some facelifting of some of the cabinets in our learning spaces. You can see that those have been primed. Those are not quite done. They will be a similar color to what's on the walls in the hallway, a light blue, bluish lavender color. half of the building has already been done. This is just, again, finishing up that project this summer to make all the classrooms look the same. And now onto our bigger two projects that are going on right now. McKinley's progressing well. You can see a picture. It was hard to take a good picture of that restroom, given it was such a small space, but those are the restrooms right near the main office. Again, this picture is already probably 10 days old. Those bathrooms are done. They are in there cleaning that space in that area. That project is very much underway. The picture in the lower right-hand corner are the single stall restrooms on, I guess, what would be the north side of the building. Those, again, are also projected to be open well in time for school, maybe even nearly done by now. And in the upper right-hand corner, you can see that is the addition, which again is still on track to be open as planned in late October, early November. Apollo is just super impressive to go walk, and it's been interesting for me to get to see it. I got to see it partway done in early July. And then I was back just a week or so ago with Principal Skullerud, and he took me for a nice long walk. And so I'll just kind of go through the pictures because, again, the pictures don't do it justice with the work that's been done or how beautiful it's going to be when it's all cleaned up and ready to go. But in the upper left-hand corner, that is the new marble floor the new tile in the commons area. The gym project is done. Those floors have been resurfaced. It's been repainted. The scoreboard was up on the wall. The new scoreboard was there. It was 1 day away from being functional, which is done now. And all of the basketball hoops have been replaced in that space as well. You've got two examples, again, of the single stall restrooms. Depending on where you're at in the building, they've just been at different stages, and that, again, was all planned so that as areas were being wrapped up, the people that would do the next part of the finishing work could continue their work so that nobody was waiting. And so you can see the tile work is already done on the restrooms in the lower left-hand corner. The ones in the lower right-hand corner were, again, getting ready for that work to be done as they were progressing through. You got the bus chute sidewalks all wrapped up and ready to go. If it doesn't rain too much here this evening, the plan is to begin some of the paving of parking lots and bus chute on Friday of this week, with projected to be done well before students and staff come back for the start of the school year. If you go to the north side of the building, you'll see that the curbs are already in the parking lot. The landscaping has been done, and they are just waiting for it to dry out enough to get in there with some big equipment and get that paving started. Many areas of Apollo have the new carpeting, and that's just a picture on the right-hand side of one of the hallways that was done. It was great to see that they have divided off sections of the building with barriers and plastic to help with some of the dust control. And Principal Skullerud and I checked in today, and they've begun already cleaning some of those areas where the main work is done to get a huge collection of that dust. And those barriers that they've put up have been great so that we're not doing work twice. And so those are areas that are getting worked on as we speak, these last handful of days. And this was a late addition picture, but Principal Skullerud shared this with me. Super cool. Right at the main entrance into the commons, the new terrazzo floor. Again, this picture is already a handful of days old. I'm not quite sure where they're at now, but that's going to be a really cool accent piece as people enter our spaces and our guests come in over at Apollo High School. The one area that no one will ever see is all of the work that's being done up on the roof, but is pretty critical to the work that we do at Apollo or any of our other buildings, making sure that we keep the elements out. That project was really done in two parts with two different contractors. The first part that started earlier in the year would be the east side or the B wing of the building, and that project is done, wrapped up, and they are in the process of moving out. The second part of that project would be the A wing, more on the north and the west side of the buildings. That project is going to be wrapped up with where they're at right now by the August 16th. They're going to clean up. They're going to make sure everything is sealed up and ready to go for the school year and the winter, and then they will reconvene next spring and summer and wrap up the rest of that project on by July 1st. So they've been very strategic in that they're only taking off as much roof as they can replace so that we don't have a ton of leaks or a ton of issues. And so they're going to stop tearing off, finish up what's already done or already prepared, and then wrap up for the summer. Just not going to be able to get it all done before school starts, so we don't want to have a mess as students and staff arrive. And so with that, those are all kind of big things, kind of go through it quickly, but a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of energy, and a lot of thought has gone into the work, and super impressed by the work of our teams to get that much work done already before August is over. So thank you.
Thanks. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Al?
I have a question on tech. Was Mike ever able to get a hold of anybody on the landscaping over there to have them come back and clean it up?
Yep, we've got that whole contract figured out. We have a meeting early next week. We're all going to collaborate together and get back on track with getting that prairie grass and native areas all figured out.
Okay.
Yep.
And it sounds like they will come back and do it?
Yep, absolutely. It was part of the original contract
I
when
know.
tech was built. Yeah,
Nobody ever came.
nope, they're coming.
Okay, good.
Thanks. Anything else? All right. Thank you. Those pictures were incredible. The swim co-op first? Okay, first up, first action item is the girls swim co-op. So this is, well, Dr. Harris, do you want to, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, will you present your team that's going to go over our new girls swim co-op?
Yep, thanks, Chair Haas. Good evening, Superintendent Putnam, board members. This evening, we're going to take some time with Principal Scholarud of Apollo High School and Activities Director Carl Heine and kind of review the request for a new girls co-op between Apollo High School, Cathedral High School, and St. John's Prep. So I'll turn it over to these gentlemen.
All right, yeah, good evening. We are here to just kind of talk and present the opportunity of a co-op here between ourselves, St. Cloud Cathedral and St. John's Prep. We were approached this summer by the two activities directors at Cathedral and St. John's Prep with a concern in the decrease in their participation numbers, and they were seeking help in being able to continue to provide that swim opportunity for their girls and also find a compatible member school in the high school league that would help facilitate that, but then also keep all of our swimmers in an area that we thought everybody could be successful. So that's when we started the conversations, with administration and superintendents to form this co-op. And it's an opportunity for us to, again, balance our numbers a little bit, give our students an opportunity to swim and compete at levels we feel like they can be competitive with, from our top swimmers to our new to swimming swimmers, and give them the opportunity to play at their level. We've finished the last 3 years with about 17 swimmers, which isn't a great number, but it's not a low number. It's an efficient number, and our kids have been successful with that. But now those kids can swim at appropriate levels for them because of that increase in participation numbers.
I think it's important to add that some logistics of this proposed co-op, this would not be a crush team. Our crush co-ops are, the key component is it's Apollo and Tech, and we have some crush that are Apollo Tech Cathedral, and some are just Apollo and Tech. This team would be St. Cloud Apollo Eagles. With the addition of our two, both schools have agreed to that. Another piece to this is just looking at what would that change for classifications. And with adding these two smaller schools, it would not raise us into a higher class, and that was very important to Mr. Heine and I. We wouldn't have even considered it if that would have happened, because that wouldn't have been good for our kids. So taking those two things in consideration, we both fully agree that this is good for our students. It gives the swim team a chance to be more successful. It will not take individual opportunities away for students. It will let us have full relays, and as we're all watching the Olympics and those things, I mean, that takes numbers to do so. And 17, we're able to compete and we're able to win some meets, but we're projected to pretty much double that number to around 30 with this addition, and we'd have a full team where we can fully compete when we go against the other conference teams. So we see the benefits of this there, and the name branding that we are was important to us.
Okay. Heather?
Can you talk a little bit about the philosophy of why you wouldn't do I mean, it would make sense in some ways, or at least from my perspective, to combine with tech like we've done with so many of our crush things. Specifically, why are you looking at this differently?
Yeah, and that was kind of the first thing we would assume would be like, why not? And like Principal Scalarud mentioned before, by us looking at that crush co-op, we would be merging with tech, and we would automatically move up into that AA, which for both of our programs would increase that level of competition. So by doing this, we're both able to stay as separate programs and yet swim at our appropriate competitiveness as far as classification.
Gilmore, keep going.
Just a question, I don't know. I know that the district does I believe the fourth grade swimming, Learn to Swim partnership with YMCA. Are you seeing any additional interest or outcomes as a result of that program? And I can't remember, is it 3 years old, 2 years old?
We piloted 3 years ago with Talahi and Madison, and all sites have been going for the last 2. It is second graders, so they're still pretty little yet, but they have a lot of enthusiasm as they get through that program, so hopefully.
When we compete swimming with other schools in our conference or sections, are we competing JV and varsity, or we just bring varsity to varsity?
It is a JV varsity meet.
Okay.
Oftentimes, we don't have the numbers to run a lot of JV heats. So a lot of our kids that probably would be competitive in a JV heat are swimming the third spot in a varsity, and oftentimes, not seeing a lot of success through that. So by doing this, again, it allows them to compete in that JV level and maybe get some success that entices them to stay at it a little bit longer and more involved.
It's really discouraging to be a lap behind somebody, and so I appreciate the thought that you were very careful in this decision of why this makes sense. So thank you very much. Cathedral and the prep school, were they practicing out at St. John's before?
They were, out at St. John's, which gets tricky once school starts for the college students. Their pool time is very limited.
Yeah.
And they're oftentimes practicing late in the evening, so.
So who is worrying and who is responsible to get those students to Apollo? Whose responsibility is that?
That would fall back to those respective
Okay,
schools. So they
okay.
have both working on and figuring out transportation for their
Okay,
athletes
just making sure.
to get to Apollo. Yep.
Okay, all right, yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Natalie?
What was the feedback from the coach when y'all shared the plan going forward?
Anytime we're talking about adding kids and changing your dynamic of how you've been doing things, it's always a lot of questions and a lot of things. So we've kind of gone through all these questions that we've tried to talk about and ask and answer, and with the understanding that it's a co-op, it's a process, and as a coach who's done it with our girls basketball program, there are steps that you just kind of got to take one step at a time. But he's excited about the opportunity to build that depth and get kids swimming where they belong, and be able to hopefully rebuild the program, especially in St. Cloud. It's becoming more of a city team, and so he's excited about it, the opportunity to compete and fill out some of those relays and give them a little bit more of a balancing that skill level was kind of his excitement there.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate your coming in to answer those questions. Oh, wait, sorry, it's an action item, isn't it?
Yeah. So with that action item, the administration recommends approval for the new girls swim co-op between Apollo High School, Cathedral, and St. John's Prep.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve that?
So move.
Sorry, was that Monica? Motion by Monica, a second by Natalie. Zach, can you call vote?
Monica Segura Schwartz,
Yes.
Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Zach Dorholz, yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Natalie Copeland.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Heather Weems.
Yes.
Okay, Tracy. Next up, we have one more action item tonight. We have the health and dental insurance premiums for 2024-2025 presented by Tracy Flinbow, Executive Director of Human Resources.
Good evening, board member, Superintendent Putnam. This is an item that's returning from the last board meeting. To recap quickly, each year the LMC, the Labor Management Committee, which has representatives from each of our bargaining units, reviews our financial performance of our insurance plans for the year and makes recommendations to the school board regarding premium increases. During years when we're not in bargaining, they may also make recommendations regarding plan design that would mitigate premium increases. This year, the LMC was facing recommendations from our financial consultant that we needed increases minimally of 17.55% in our premiums. That would be including using some of our excess reserve in the health insurance fund. And the committee as a whole asked for other options regarding the plan design to see if that could mitigate some of those premium increases. Although it was an off year and typically Health Partners does not allow for the change of plan design in the middle of a 2-year contract, because we have not made any plan design changes since 2014, they agreed to allow us to make a plan design to change the deductibles from $2,000 person for the single plan to $3,500 and from $4,000 on the family plan to $7,000 deductible. With that change in the plan design, it allowed for a premium increase at 10%. Together with that 10% increase and using the remaining excess reserve, that would have us fairly funded for the coming year for our self-insured health plans. And so the committee, reviewing all of those options at their July meeting, recommend to the school board unanimously that there be a 10% increase in the single premium, a 10% increase in the family premium, and that the deductibles be increased to a $3,500, $7,000 deductible plan. Board members have all of those details from last meeting's background sheet in front of you. The dental plan was adequately funded, and there was no recommended changes in those premiums, so those premiums will hold for both single and family premiums. So the administration is recommending approval of the Labor Management Committee's recommendation on those premium changes and plan design changes. Those need to be approved so that we can move forward with open enrollment, which will begin the 1st of September. Happy to answer any questions.
Scott, Al, do you go Scott first or? Okay.
First of all, I'm prepared to vote yes to support the increases. I don't think there's anything that we can do to avoid that, and I understand that. But over the last couple of weeks since our last meeting, it's been a really stressful period for me. There was a lot of things that came to light that were upsetting to me. And I know at the last meeting, I was told that my questions on the EME were really not relevant to the subject we were discussing. We were discussing cost changes to the health plan, and EME was handled in the collective bargaining sessions. And it's true, that's where EME is negotiated, but EME was still totally relevant to that discussion, and I'm going to explain why. Sometimes when you have a bad feeling about something, with this monthly insurance contribution change, something didn't feel right to me, and it caused me to take a look. I would never have looked at it or even been aware it existed if it had not been for a district employee calling and voicing concerns. So I want to thank that person for making me aware of the EME clause within that contract. What I uncovered was deeply disturbing to me. It was disturbing in a few ways. Number one, the lack of transparency over so many years. Number two, the lack of transparency in the presentation of the cost of the health plan increases and who's bearing the brunt of those costs. Number three, the district is exposed in its contracts to an unlimited cost fluctuation, and the actual cost is hidden from our view. Number four, fairness. I just believe that we all live and work in the same community, and we should all play by the same rules. No one should be granted unlimited benefits based on a marital status paid for by the remaining participants. First, the cost of the single plan is increasing by $81.43 a month. The cost of a family plan is increasing by $186.58 per month. So annualized, the cost increase is $977, or figure $1,000 for a single and $2,239 for a family. But if you're lucky enough to be married to another employee, then your contract includes language for one family or two single plans, paid in full, no upside cost limitations, just flat out paid in full. For the majority of employees, their health insurance contribution benefit is a fixed dollar amount in both year one and year two. Budgeted accordingly, and any premium increases are passed on to the employee themselves. But for the EME employees, the district or the taxpayer has to come up, in this case, with an additional $200,000 to cover the cost of those premium increases. As a school board member, this cost represents a $200,000 increase in the cost of the contracts we approved just a few short months ago. I should be told in no uncertain terms in a public meeting exactly what the cost is going to be and where the money is going to be coming from. I do not believe any board member knew or was aware that voting yes to this premium increase 2 weeks ago was voting to increase the cost of our employee contracts by $200,000. We were made very aware that the non-EME employees would see large increases in their premiums and how bad we felt it was, or how bad we felt about it. But it was not an option. Costs were going up and we can't control them. We were also told there would be no change to the contribution for EME employees. This is a $200,000 increase for the school district concealed in a mundane, matter-of-fact sentence. Where's the change order for something like this? I mean, when we have a parking lot that has a change order, take Apollo, where you have to do some additional work, it comes to us in the form of a change order, and we all see how much more it's going to cost us, and we vote on whether or not we're going to approve that. But on this one here, we've got a $200,000 increase that's just being paid for, and I have no idea where that money is coming from. I have no idea what fund it's coming out of. I don't know if we're planning to lay off FTE to pay for it. I don't know. It's just like it's just coming out of thin air somewhere. And it just doesn't seem that anyone wants to talk about it because of how unfairly that plan is administered. I'm sorry to say to the 800 employees that participate in our health plans and pay premiums that their premiums are increasing this year. And then next year, when we go into negotiations, your potential salary increases are reduced by an equal amount because the dollars allocated to the premium increase this year are picked up by the district, but the next year they're going to be picked up by the dollars that are allocated to your employee group. It becomes part of that contract. Let's see. In the next round of negotiations, the EME cost increases will be included in the year one totals on the costing sheet with no comparison to the previous year shown. And when the state tells us the dollar amounts that we'll have available for negotiating new contracts in the first year, the first $200,000 of new money will go to paying the increased EME contribution for the 96 couples participating in EME. Salary increases will be reduced by $200,000 to pay for this. And these costs have to be paid for. I mean, it isn't anybody's fault. They got to be paid for. The sad thing about a clause like EME is that no matter how unethical the parameters are, I, as a single board member, and even the entire board collectively, have little power to undo this. It has to be done through the collective bargaining process. We can make recommendations for change, which I believe must happen, and we should never have an unlimited benefit within our contracts. Or we could just refuse to approve any contract if it was not changed, but then enter all of the problems that that would create. The bottom line is that the only way I see any major change on this line item is if union membership, the 800 members who pay premiums, speak up and make it clear to union leadership that they will no longer be footing the bill for an unfair agreement. I'm truly sorry to all of the employees footing the bill here. I felt sick for a week when I saw how this was handled. There's no excuse for a lack of transparency, and no employee group should be exempt from cost increases on the backs of other employees. That's a shameful abuse of the system. And I completely disagree with the attorney that the EME benefit is not based on it's not, the marriage is not, the person's marital status is not the factor that determines whether they're eligible for EME. If you take a couple, two singles living together in a home, both teachers in the district, they're eligible only for a single, each one is eligible for a single health plan. It's only until they get a marriage certificate that changes. And their relationship with the district, it's not a unique relationship with the district. Nothing changes as far as their relationship with the district when they get married. The only thing that changes is the relationship between themselves and a contract between themselves. And that's what changes it. So it's 100% predicated on a person's marital status. And I don't understand how it can be legal to have a clause in a contract, and I understand they're all over the state of Minnesota, where it's not unique to our district. But how can there be a clause in the contract that says, based upon your marital status, you receive a better benefit, an increased benefit, and in fact, in this case, an unlimited benefit that others do not, that others in a very similar situation to you that don't have that marriage contract don't get. It just doesn't make sense to me. And the other thing that does not make sense to me is, why is it that the lawyer, when in her opinion, wrote that there was belief that both employees should be entitled to the full family benefit, because they're both employees, so they should both be entitled to the full benefit of the family plan. However, two employees who are, an employee who is married, but married to someone outside of the district, and say it's the woman that works for us and the man that works outside the district, and those two, their family chooses to use the health plan for the person who works outside the district. Why is that employee not entitled to the benefit? There's no difference between that and two people who are married. Why are they both entitled to the benefit? Yet, just because you're not married to someone within the district, now you're no longer entitled to any benefit. I can't figure that stuff out in my head, and my head just spins, and I get ticked off, and then I have to do something to just forget about it. But that's my statement on that one. If I was one of the people who was paying premium, I would make sure that I got a hold of the union leadership and said, we don't want to foot the bill for EME benefits any longer, and we want a fair plan for all employees within the district. Thank you.
As I understand it, without the deductible increases, we would be looking at 17% plus premium increase.
10% increase in the premiums, and then the deductible will go up in each of those
And if the
plans.
deductibles didn't go up, we'd be looking at 17 plus.
17.55%.
Okay. What is our contribution to the premium? Is it a fixed amount?
It is a fixed amount of $615 to a single and $1090.95 to the family plans, except for principals and directors who receive $1193 towards the family plan.
Okay, so it doesn't really change for us then.
It does not change for us because of the fixed amounts.
It certainly changes for our employees.
It does.
Okay, I just wanted to make clear on that.
I want to be clear that it changes
For
$200,000
the EMEs.
to us because of EME. The employees who are married to other employees receive a fully paid family health plan, no matter what it costs. And so the full 10% increase is being absorbed by us. The school district is paying for those 93 those 93 couples. They're paying the full cost of their health plan. So the school district is absorbing the increase for those 93. Any other employee within the school district, they are paying the full increase of the full value of their plan. So they're not just seeing 10% increases in their contribution, they're seeing 30 or 40% increases in their contribution. Because the district's is flat. It's a $2,000 plan. The district is paying $1,000. If it's going up 10%, now the district, if it's going up 10%, now it's going to be a $2,200 plan. And the district is still only paying $1,000. So they're paying the full $200 increase, not a 10% increase upon what they were paying. So you're seeing people who are not EME employees are seeing 30 to 40% increases in the cost of their health insurance. And people with EME benefits are getting a 0% increase because they're not paying anything for their health insurance.
Do you have more questions, Scott? Okay. Heather, did you have a question?
So just clarify, at this point, because it's already been finalized negotiating, I mean, which is what Al's point at the beginning was, I'll vote for it because it's the position that we're in, but it brings to light concerns moving forward and how we handle it. But really, right now, without a positive vote, where we land at, okay, if we didn't get a positive vote, just give me, can you outline, Tracy, what happens then?
And the district would bear the cost of the increases on all the plans because we would still incur the liability on all of the claims, but we would not be capturing any additional premium from any employees. And to be clear, we used to have a single insurance benefit for all teachers. They had 100% of a plan. The board spent a couple of rounds negotiating a cap to that. And we were able to achieve that cap. And so certainly it's something that can happen with the EMEs as well.
Have we been here before where we're mid-contract and the healthcare costs are changing? And I just don't remember that.
We have. We have not made a change because remember, we've had all those beautiful COVID years and so on. So we have not had to make any change because since we did the big change in 2014-15, we did make a change in the plan design then. Prior to that, from 2008 to 2014, when we were fully insured through resource training and insurance, it was typical every year, I would say, that we were tweaking the plans. Not always the deductibles, but sometimes it was copays. We'd be increasing the pharmacy copay or the clinic visit copay or the hospital visit copay in order to mitigate those. So that happened both under our fully insured plans and it's also happened under our self-insured plans.
So Al, I see your point, and I would like us to continue this conversation as to what that looks like as we're moving forward with our continuous contract negotiations that we have. I do know that I've been on the board here for almost 8 years. I know the board always prides itself on transparency, and I know that the district does that as well. So I know that each one of you in administration value that. Yes, we're in a situation where we didn't know that, but I don't assume any ill intention of you. It's, we didn't know that, we didn't see that, and that I think everybody here is saying, yes, we need to look at this, to discuss this, and again, but I don't think anybody was trying to whisper and hide something. It's just the situation, here we are today, and we all know that healthcare costs are going up. This is difficult for families, whether you're a district employee or not. This is very expensive. It's hard on our families. And I see a lot of work being put in discussions about trying to manage this healthcare. I know the district spends a lot of attention to that. So, yeah, it's a horrible situation to be in. But I would support moving forward what that looks like to address this, what seems to be inequity in
As
our
our
families.
contracts all reopen on June 30th of this year, we always start with receiving that authorization from the board in any direction about items of the contracts that you would like to identify as your negotiations priorities. We've been doing that for a long time, including healthcare contributions have always been part of. Particularly looked at the EME as a priority in negotiations, but I'm certainly hearing that it is, and it was one that we'll have on our list as we go into that process.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how we kind of formally we can just nod our head and, as people are talking about that. Heather, were you jumping in and then Al, or doesn't matter?
I think you answered, I think the question was answered because I know Al had, so now I'm going. Al had started the conversation with encouraging the union members to begin the conversation. But you're saying there's an avenue by which we can bring it forward and say on behalf of the district and the employees, we would like that to be a priority for negotiations.
At the start of the opening session of every bargaining year with each of our groups starts with the board's bargaining principles that you adopt each year and a notice of all of our priorities. And so that first meeting in all of our labor management meetings for bargaining starts with the district identifying their priorities for bargaining, and the labor group identifying their priorities for bargaining. And so as we have done now for about 12 years, we've always identified equalizing those contributions for all of our non-licensed staff contributions to the teacher contributions. And frankly, because that has been a clear priority of the school board and it's been one of those identified items, we've been very successful in doing that because of the weight with which the board put that priority forward. So this would be like that at the start of negotiations. It's on the list of board priorities, and we make it one of the things that we negotiate very intently around with the teams.
Yeah, I was just going to say, back when it started, I mean, it's been 14 or 15 years, I think, since the EME was put in place. And maybe
30.
even 30?
1997, it went
Okay.
into the teacher's
So back in
contract.
1997, health insurance plans looked a lot different than they do today. And there probably wasn't a cost differential like there is today, where it would be something that would be that would drastically impact the other members of the group.
Yeah, I think
But
the
it's
rising
gotten-
costs have clearly
It's
driven
gotten to a
that.
point where the cost of the EME has a major impact on the cost to the other members in the group. And something has to be done to balance that out, because it just isn't fair. And the reason that I wrote this and the reason that I wanted, and I know it's not easy to just come out and blast information out like that either, but it has to come out, it has to be transparent, and people have to be able to talk about it. Because every employee in the district is a valued employee. And I don't care if you're married to someone else from the district or not, I still value you as an employee. And I don't think that your set of benefits should be just so much better than the benefits for any other employee. I mean, think about it. We're telling married employees or family plan employees that they have to pay another $2,000 a year out of their family budget for health plans. But if you're married to someone else in that district, it's not a factor because everything is just fully paid. And both of those employees are equally valued, and we can't have that kind of a difference going on in the school district. I think it's just it's shameful, and I'm not blaming anyone or pointing a finger at anyone specific. This happened a long time ago, but it was really smart how they did it because it got buried in there and into a position where it never gets addressed or talked about. And when it's just kind of like, well, it's just back there and we forget about it. But the costs have gotten to the point now where we can't forget about it, and so now we got to address it.
All right. First of all, I apologize if anything that I say was talked about in January. Oh my gosh, July. I wasn't here. Two things. One question I have is, when we've talked in the past when we've been here about, because of COVID years, we have this influx, of money, and we're going to utilize that in order to not pass what we have to pass on this year onto our employees. And, just to say what everyone else says, including a lot of employees, this is going to be really tough. And this just in general is really tough for families. And we all feel that in this room. So can you walk me through just a high level of where we are at now and what we're using out of that pot of money in order to make this better than it could be? Because I know we could be talking in the 20% ranges, if we didn't do any of the things that we're doing here. And then how much we have left, and if that will be able to be utilized in the following years, or are we kind of done with that? That whole, is the wave done, I think is what I'm trying to get at. And if it's so, that's very sad.
So the wave is coming to a close.
Oh, okay.
We had, and I don't have all of the charts from the financial advisor, but I think the one I need here is here. So our target reserve for this plan is around $6 million. It's about a third of the annual cost of the plan. And so we are probably going to end this year with about a $7.5 million reserve, if I recall. There's always that run out that happens between now and everybody using their benefits in the summer, and then it runs out for a bit. So I think we've got about $8 million there now, and it's projected to be at about $7 million. So we still have a gap between that identified reserve and the projected reserve for the coming year of a couple $1 million. And so we have burned off a couple $1 million this year in having kept the premiums at 5% increases last year. We used some of that excess reserve, and now we will kind of burn off the rest of that excess reserve by keeping the premiums at 10% rather than the $14.55. Even with the change in the deductible plans, the recommendation would have been, absent that excess reserve, that the increases should have been around 15%. And so again, we have a bit of that left, so we can mitigate that for this year and bring them down to 10%. And then the contracts will be open, and we can re-examine all of those things, because we'll be in a bidding year 2 next year. So we'll be getting new competitive bids from all of the various carriers, and we'll have the opportunity both through negotiations and through that bidding process to reevaluate where we are with the plans.
Okay. The wave is ending. Thank you for the honesty there. In regards to the EME, and reading the opinion of the lawyer and kind of hearing, Al, what you have to say. I mean, I'm all for transparency. I think we all are, and thank you, Shannon. That was really very true about all of us. I think we have to be careful as a board, because this is a retention tool, a huge retention tool. And so on one hand, we have to be transparent, and it's great that we're talking about it and that we'll continue to talk about it. But we also need to understand that there will be people who don't have the opinion of some of us here about that. And also then what will that do to retention and what will that, so just putting that on the table so it's not like, we're going to guns blaze, get this figured out. It's also like it's very, if it's something that's 30 years old, I mean, we're kind of, not that we shouldn't talk about it, but we're messing with some history, and that could be interesting. So just wanted to put that on the table. Thanks, Tracy.
Okay. So this is an action item, and we're looking for a motion to approve the 2024-2025 health and dental insurance plan renewals and premiums. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And do I have a second? I have a motion by Heather, a second by Zach. Zach, can you call vote?
Heather Weems,
Yes.
Monica Segura-Swartz,
Yes.
Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Zach Dorholz, yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Natalie Copeland.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Thank you, Tracy. Okay, we're moving on to, this is just a discussion item tonight. It's the review of the 2024-2025 student and family handbooks. And presenting tonight, we have Sasha Hansen, principal of North Junior High, and Becky Estrada, principal of South Junior High. Welcome. Glad to have you guys.
All right. Good evening, Chair Haas, Dr. Putnam, school board members. My name is Becky Estrada. I'm principal of South Junior High.
And I am Sasha Hansen, principal at North Junior High. Mine is on.
We have the privilege tonight of highlighting the key changes of the elementary and secondary student and family handbooks for the 24-25 school year. Our meeting and process schedule is outlined here, and you can see that we met over multiple days and have a thorough overview of the handbook and engaged with multiple building and district leaders to gain a unique perspective and voice in this process.
As Principal Estrada indicated, we had a wide variety of members in our educational system collaborating, not only to update our handbooks, but to also align language with our student code of conduct. We took time to read elementary and secondary handbooks line by line, having them kind of laid out side by side to make sure that we had the language alignment was our major focus to better support our families and students as they transition through our educational system. You can see up there, there's the representation of everybody that was able to go to the meetings that Principal Estrada outlined on the last page. But we also began to look at the model MSBA handbook and made intentional year one language changes for that alignment purposes. This alignment of our current handbooks to the model MSBA handbook will continue throughout the 24-25 school year with the goal of finishing that update in by June of 2025.
So tonight, we will be highlighting the following key changes to the elementary and secondary handbooks together, and then we'll give time at the end of the presentation for your questions.
So on the previous slide, we have about 7 key updates, and we try to uniform kind of each slide, so it'll have kind of the header and then the language that actually was changed is next, and then what type of change it was. And so all of our changes were either a legislative change, an alignment change, it was new to our handbook, or it was something that we were looking to look alignment with the MSBA policy. So the first one was a recent legislative change that was made in language with regard to excusable absences and now require schools to include cultural practices and observances. So those will now be excused absences in our attendance policy. And so the previous language was around holiday observances. And so now it says holiday, cultural, or cultural practice or observance will be excused. And that was both elementary and secondary changes.
Okay, this next one is on academic acceleration and retention. This is a language update. This was included in our handbooks previously. However, we did just update the language to mirror the MSBA model handbook. And then we also included Board Policy 513 for ease in the handbook for our parents.
The next key update is about allergy-aware schools. Again, both elementary and secondary added latex to the existing list of allergens right away. So you'll know that our student handbooks are in alpha order. So there is a separate heading for latex, but because allergies is up at the top, we wanted to make sure that we explicitly called out latex to make sure that parents are keeping us informed of allergies so we can make sure students and staff are safe and healthy at school.
Okay, this next one is high school only. It pertains to one of the parts of our annual FERPA statement. It is not new legislation, but it is a legislative requirement. It was not previously in our handbook, so we included this, and we used MSBA model handbook language to include the statute and federal law that outlines an obligation of our school district to release the names, addresses, electronic mail, and home telephone numbers of our students in grades 11 and 12 to military recruiting officers within 60 days of that request. And then we also included the opt-out process for families and included how to do that by sending an email to Donna Roper.
The next key update is around assessment and state testing, and so this was just a language update. So Donna Roper, the Executive Director of Research, Evaluation, and Assessment, provided the committee with updated language to really shift the focus around our assessments to student learning. And so I didn't put the whole thing in there because it was quite lengthy, but we kind of had three kind of focus areas of change. The first one was just making sure all classrooms have clearly defined learning expectations and units of study, and those are explicitly told to students so they know what they're supposed to be able to do and how they're going to be able to show mastery. The second was around what assessments really are for, right? And they're to purposely measure student learning and to provide feedback to both students and families to say, this is where your child is currently at, here are strength areas and here are areas of growth that we can continue to work on. To show mastery at a later date, potentially. And then the third one was around making sure that we had a link to our district's assessment plan, so both students and families know when our state assessments are happening.
Okay, this next update is middle level only. This is a language update to add bags and purses to be stored in lockers, much like backpacks in our schools. So for middle school students, keeping backpacks and in their assigned lockers was added to handbooks in 23-24. And this year we're adding bags and purses to be stored in student lockers. And this helps us to align expectations of bringing only educational materials to classes.
And then the last update was just a new language. And so this new language was to further ensure that students who are in need of academic or physical accommodation provide a doctor's note to the school office. That allows us to get that information to the nurse and get it into their file, but then also be able to articulate to staff and teachers about what that accommodation is to make sure that we can effectively support students that need either short-term or long-term again, accommodations or changes that are made while at school. And so the prime example that happens most frequently is the concussion care plan. And so making sure that we are having most up-to-date information to make sure that we are best meeting the students with those accommodations.
And last, how are we going to communicate these key changes? It's going to be critical to ensure that everyone within our school communities is really aware and has consistent messaging around all of these changes to our handbook. Families will receive communication from building leaders in their back-to-school newsletters, and students will receive explicit teaching through lessons in our advisories and morning meeting sessions. Staff will receive this information during the professional development sessions during our workshop weeks. So that's our communication plan. Thank you. And do you have any questions for us?
Monica?
Hi, thank you so much. In one of the first changes that you did, that you included, I think that it was for excuse absence, cultural days. Do you have those defined?
We do not have that defined. So the legislative session that gave us that requirement, it was around observances specifically to our Indigenous and Native American population. It did not have specific dates or specific things. And so if a parent or family calls and says, this is a cultural observance that that my child's going to, that will be an excused absence. They'll be coded as excused absence.
I think that it needs clarity, because cultural days, I can go with my, salsa day. It's my cultural day. And we will have to let me excuse myself because I have a salsa day.
And it was a requirement to add it to our handbooks from our legislators in the session. So we did add it, and I'm sure we'll be having further discussion, as principal group about anything that might come up that would be challenging in that language that was added to the handbook.
Yeah, but don't expect them to be challenging. I don't expect a lot of parents to be or children to come up with that, but it is it is not clear to have cultural days.
Yeah, and I would agree, right? But that's also could be said for the religious holiday, right? Like if I practice whatever religion I practice.
But you do have religious holidays explained. You said cultural days, religious holiday.
Cultural observances and religious holidays.
And in our handbook, it already excuses religious holidays.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could be a parent and I could say my child's going to a religious holiday today, that is an excused absence. And so we haven't seen any families or any students trying to abuse that language. And so we'll take each one in stride and have a conversation to see how many absences we had.
Okay. Not really concerned about the abuse. Well, okay.
Al and then Natalie.
I think it was on the military recruiting page, if you could go back to that one.
You bet. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, down at the bottom, it says parents may opt out of disclosing their child's information to military recruiters by sending an email to Donna Roper. I always discourage, I know these things are electronic and they're only a year long, but I always discourage sending an email to a specific person and instead say send an email to this office or something. So if that person for any reason isn't there at the end of the year, people aren't seeing the wrong information, and when they do send an opt-out, it gets to the right person. So I would encourage you not to use names.
Yeah, thank you. So in the handbook, it actually says to refuse the release of information, the parent should email the Executive Director of Research Evaluation Assessment. And then for this year, it says Donna Roper at her email address. You can just click on it. And then we're hoping, or Donna is hoping, that to include military opt-out in the subject line, so then she can keep really good track in the folder. But thank you for that. But the language specifically in the handbook does say Executive Director of REA.
Can you remind me, going back to the middle school bags, I remember that whole discussion and agree with it. But what about cell phones? Can you remind me what that practice is in middle school?
Away for the day in middle school. I believe that started last year.
Yeah.
New to middle school, but away for the day.
Yeah. Also, so if they bring it, it's also included in that bags and purses? Or if that's kind of a little bit more?
The language in our handbook says cell phones will be kept in backpacks. Backpacks are in lockers.
Yeah. So they choose whether they want to bring it or not and keep it away for the day in a locker, which, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it says the expectation is that the student has it in their student-assigned locker,
Yeah.
the cell phone,
Yeah. That's what I thought.
or personal electronic device.
Yeah.
We had pens, yep.
Okay. Thank you.
And all students at that level have a locker, right? As opposed to
Correct.
high school, they don't necessarily.
Correct.
Anybody else have any questions, Scott?
Yeah, I've kind of spent some time this afternoon reading through the handbooks, and there was one area that you haven't mentioned tonight that concerned me a little, and that was weather closings for snow days versus remote learning days. For remote learning days, our people are being productive. On a snow day, it's like a vacation. And is there some sort of an order that we do these things in? I mean, if I can see where you might have to do a remote learning day first while the computers are charged, and then the snow day second, which I think is kind of what we have been doing. But, I mean, we could just go snow day, and everybody's got a non-productive days in a row that the district is paying money for. I'm not sure how much. I'm guessing maybe $500,000.
Scott, I
you-
think Nikki can
sorry,
jump
go
in
ahead.
and answer that.
Yep. So that is actually an item on our next board agenda, that we are going to talk about our flexible learning days and what that will look like for the upcoming school year. Last year, we had utilized a 5 flexible day learning, and then we went into 3 snow days, and then we were at 0. So any days beyond that, we would have to make up within our school calendar. This year, we are going to have 1 snow day for that first inclement weather day, where we will get our plans in order and be talking through those plans and processes to help students be successful. Then we will go to 5 e-learning days, where students are engaged online with their learning. And then, should we have to, because Mother Nature gives us more snow this year, we will have 2 school snow days and then 0 for makeup calendar days. So we will go through that at our next board meeting for your approval and make sure that we have all those days marked down.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, guys, for presenting tonight. This is a discussion item, so is it come back as an action item? I can't remember.
It will also be on our next board agenda meeting. Yep.
Okay, as a line item, is it in the consent agenda, or is it on a
It will be for action next time.
next item? Okay, thank you very much.
Have a great night.
Appreciate it. Okay, we're moving on to the reports. We have the Board of Education Standing Committee reports. I'm thinking that we only have one tonight, the Board Development Policy and Governance Committee Chair Scott Andreasen.
Okay. The Board Development Committee met on July 24th, 2024, and Executive Director Skella Rude presented board policy, which is development and maintenance of an inventory of fixed assets and fixed asset accounting system. The policy was recommended to move forward to the first and second readings. And guess what? She gets to tell us all about it when we very soon, in our work session. Also, Assistant Superintendents Harris and Abenson brought forward board policies of 520, student surveys, and 512, school-sponsored student publications and activities. These policies were reviewed with recommendations to bring them back for further discussion at our next meeting. That's it.
All right, thank you. I don't think I'm leaving anybody out. So then we're moving on to future agenda items. The August 21st board meeting topics will include the St. Cloud Police Department SRO program update, approval of the 24-25 student and family handbooks, approval of the 24-25 weather-related e-learning days plan, approval of the proposed resolutions for the MSBA delegate conference, and some policy readings. At this time, does any board member want to suggest a future agenda item? All right, so then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn tonight's board meeting.
So move.
Do I have a second? I have a motion by Scott, a second by Natalie. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, so regular board meeting is adjourned at 7:45 PM. And at that same time, we are opening up the Board of Education work session. We have 2 items on our work session agenda for tonight. First up, we have the proposed resolutions for the MSBA Delegate Conference presented by Board Member Al Dahlgren.
I guess I'm up. I kind of forgot about this one. So there's three that we put together, and it wasn't just me. I had help. The first one that we'll look at is the redesigning education for the age of artificial intelligence. And I had help from Superintendent Putnam on this one, and maybe Lori, would you want to talk about it a little bit?
And I for sure cannot take credit. Executive Director Donna Roper and Charles Vidal, whom you met a month or so ago, helped craft this, or did craft this, with input, of course, from me and Al. And so very grateful for your work on that. And so this work is coming out of the summit that we did, and it really tackles the what and the how, right, of what needs, of moving forward with generative AI. So it begins with kind of a general statement, setting the landscape, recognition of the board's commitment and understanding of the impact of artificial intelligence, and that our students need to be prepared to thrive, and that to do those things, to thrive in a world where continuous learning, adaptability, and technological fluency are essential, that we do have to take a look, as well, the state needs to take a look at the current content standards and graduation requirements, because we know they aren't going to fully fulfill the competencies needed, and that the rapid pace of these changes are furthermore going to drive the need for that change. So we are, as a board, calling on the MSBA, in partnership with an alliance that has come out of this summit, right? It's 70 of the folks who are at the summit who are coming together to support this work and who support these kinds of changes, or calling on these kinds of changes. The board would be asking the legislature to fund and support the Department of Education with a comprehensive review to significantly update content standards to reflect the education necessary for success in an AI-driven world. This board would be advocating for the development of new courses and programs, things like technology and engineering, social sciences, creative arts, and entrepreneurship and business, which some of those are required, right? But still fairly marginalized when we look at what is required to graduate. That you would also be calling on the legislature and MDE to support significant professional development initiatives, and that you would be continuing to look for required partnerships with local businesses and industries and higher education, because we know that nobody in the education world or anywhere exists in a vacuum, let alone MDE or content standards or graduation standards. Those are all tied to college admissions, to what gets funded from the business and industry side. So really asking for a collaborative, thorough look from all of the people who are impacted by what happens in E12 education. And then we are also saying that this board is saying that this draft, or this, once it's approved, this resolution would be shared with MSBA, which is of course where Al and Scott will bring it as delegates, but also to the MDE, to DEED, another commissioner from St. Cloud, woohoo, go Commissioner Verlick, and then any other relevant stakeholders such as MASA and AMSD. Certainly the Minnesota Business Association is very keen to continue to take part. So that would be what this board would be asking for.
Okay, should we discuss this before we move on to the next one? Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments or input on this one?
Comments?
Okay, Al?
The section on, we're asking that the St. Cloud proposes that the Minnesota School Boards Association, in partnership with the Minnesota Generative AI Alliance, and I'm still questioning, has there been any, let me ask it this way, is the Minnesota School Boards Association a member of the Minnesota, do they have a representative on the Minnesota Generative AI Alliance?
They do.
Okay.
Mr. Gary Lee?
Okay, so that's new.
He did write to us following the summit. He did and asked to make sure that he was included in follow-up work. And so the first meeting, and he was also at the summit, right? But he was one of the 70 or so that asked to be included. And so we did take most of July, and then that team actually meets on Friday. So he will be there.
Okay, and that's different than the conference calls that have taken place?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so what happened after the summit, just for this board's awareness, is that the team split into a how and a what, right? We see a lot of work being done around the what, right? MDE just put out guidelines around Gen AI and education, very much what. What do you do next? Not as much as what this board is asking for, which is how are we going to actually change the content of education to prepare our students, right? The what is, let's make clear guidelines about, can you use Gen AI in assessments? You know, what does academic misconduct look like in light of Gen AI? So that group, the what, meets Friday, but the how group, which really, I think has a harder task, right? Because now that team is really trying to leverage business, policymakers, commissioners to tackle this very challenging work of what our board is calling for is addressing standards level change. So that group has met twice now.
That's
how.
the other group.
That is correct.
That's the conference call group.
Yes, that is the call that Charles Fadel is working. He's working on the how team.
Yep. Would it be beneficial to us to ask Gary to be on that also? I'm trying to complete the loop.
You know, I think so. I think that team will continue to loop more people in, right? We were, you know, at this point, it stayed fairly small because there are very few people who very honestly have the leverage, right? I don't have the leverage, right? Who have the leverage to move the levers of power, right?
That's what I'm kind of saying is that I think Minnesota School Boards Association is one of those organizations that has the levers to move things through the
Potentially.
legislature.
Sure, potentially, yep.
And I feel like some representative from MSBA should be on both of those groups. They are as far as school districts are concerned, they're the number one lobbying machine for the Minnesota legislature, right?
For school boards.
For school boards.
For school boards, I think that would be a fair statement. I'm not sure that it's accurate for like education in general, right? Admin would certainly be far more powerful in this moment, right, than MSBA. I think we can certainly take a look at that. Right now, to be very frank, that the direction from that how team is actually looking to move more through DEED, even through the Department of Ed, because workforce outcomes of DEED, and so really looking to broaden, right, since you guys are doing such good work around education and calling for support from the legislature on the education piece, that how team has broadened beyond the education realm, and there's a report being done by Luke Greiner under Matt Verilek, and they're looking actually to go through ways and means, through taxes, through agriculture, because AI doesn't impact just education. So I think your point is well taken about including MSBA in continued conversation, and know that it is that group is working much more broadly than just MDE. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I will certainly bring that back to the team.
Yeah. I kind of feel as though if it wasn't Gary that came to the conference, if it would have been, I forgot his name, Kirk, they'd probably be there. Because I think Kirk would have sat at that table.
Potentially, and not even everybody at the table is part of that conversation even, so.
But I'm just trying to, like I said, I'm trying to complete that loop because it feels a little awkward to ask them to be lobbying for something that they're not a part of, that they don't have the full information on. Maybe is what
I think that's a very fair point. What if we just took that piece out? Took out in partnership with? so that you as a board aren't linking yourselves to that work. Would that feel more comfortable?
So School Boards Association, call upon the legislature. I'd be okay with that.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Al.
Because I think that sentence it kind of hands it off from us to the Minnesota Generative AI Alliance, and
I'm with you on that. Thank you for that.
that change I would make. If
Yep.
everyone else has to speak up too.
Okay, any other discussion on this one? Okay, number 2. Oh. Which one are you going to next here? Okay.
Yep. And this one, I had help from Amy in writing this one. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the St. Cloud Area School District asks MSBA to urge the legislature to increase the per pupil lease levy authority to $266 per student and to add an inflationary annual increase to the cap. And Amy, do you want to speak on that?
I sure can. So this is something that has been somewhat on my radar for a number of years. We as a district have been fortunate to be able to utilize lease levy authority a number of years ago to put really critically needed additions on a number of our buildings. Most of our buildings have an addition at one point or the other that was funded through lease levy bond issuances. We are very close to that lease levy authority cap. It's $212 per pupil. It has been that for over 10 years. And I think we all know from what we've seen in the economy and inflation that the cost to lease or construct space clearly has not held constant for 10 years. And so when we have enrollment shifts or things that would necessitate an addition to an existing building, really right now, being at the cap, our only option would be to go to the voters for a referendum. And there's no backup plan if that doesn't pass. And so what I did in terms of coming up with the amount is just applied some kind of general, had we applied the per year formula increase to that $212, which we know that the per year formula increase hasn't kept up with inflation either, but at least it's something that would produce an increase, and to tie that to inflation going forward. That would give us the ability to be able to have a board authorized certificate of participation issuance if we needed to do an addition at a building.
So I have a question, Amy. Is the 212 to 266 is tied to the funding increases? You said?
It is.
But can we look at what were the inflationary increases and just ask for the inflationary increases for those years?
Yeah, we could update that dollar amount.
That number, the 266 is not really there's no point to that exact number other than it was tied back that way. But the actual costs have increased over that period of time by the inflationary increase. So why not just ask for the inflationary increase and then to tie it to inflationary increases from this point forward?
Yeah, and I went back and forth, and we can pull that data and see what that number would be and compare. The increases that they had done in previous years prior to the 10 years it's been held constant were pretty minimal. And so I think wherever we land, we want to balance the ability to have some flexibility and some additional lease levy authority with what kind of comfort level our lawmakers are going to have.
Increases, and then instead of asking for a dollar amount, we could just ask them for a substantial increase to the current lease levy authority or lease levy per student authority or something along those lines, and just kind of leave it
open-ended.
Leave it blank. Because I'm reading this thinking about being at the delegate conference and a bunch of school board members who don't know what lease levy is. Reading this and then their eyes are going to go to that 266, and the first question is going to be, why 266? There's got to be a reason for that. And so
Yeah, I'm not tied to asking for a certain amount. I know when we did the resolutions last year, we had focused on charter schools and at that time had done similar language asking to have the same per pupil that charter schools. I did the math and that would equate to about a $7 million increase. I don't, foresee that being reasonable as, we step back and start actually quantifying for a large district what that would actually equate to in tax authority. And so certainly, I'm not sure if it matters if there's a dollar amount. I think the legislature could sort that out. And to your point, if we put a dollar amount and they want to look at tying it to inflation, the higher that number ends up, the better off we are. And so it may, as you suggest, be better to just leave that open-ended.
Yeah, and we all know that the cities and counties have unlimited taxing authority. And so I don't know why they're afraid of school boards specifically as far as abuse of the tax laws or the tax levy authority, because cities and counties have it and they don't tend to abuse it. There are just natural limits put on things like that. But okay, any questions on that one?
Lori?
Al, can I ask a clarification? I wrote down for a substantial increase in the lease level levy authority is to replace the number amount, but did you also want something, language in there about it being tied to inflation?
Going forward.
And moving forward, thank you, that's what you'll get that, okay,
Yeah, I
thanks.
think
Okay, perfect.
that might be the better way to go, just
Yep, perfect,
kind
thanks.
of leave it open to the legislature and they can determine what that would be. But
Okay, and then we have one more.
Yep. The third one is just a bring back. Last year I had one resolution that turned into 6. And I stood up there for about an hour. Because each time you read a resolution, then anyone who wants to talk gets to stand up and take the mic. And every time I'd read a resolution, I'd get a whole bunch of people standing up. And there's like 4 mics around the room. There'd be lines at each one. And they'd all sit and talk about how we were attacking charter schools and this didn't feel fair and blah, blah, blah. And it went on. And it took, to get through 6 questions, took probably an hour. And I don't want to bring them all back. And we did pass 2 of them, so it wasn't a futile effort. We passed 2 of those resolutions. But I looked through the resolutions that we did last year, and I was like, what's the most impactful one? That, I don't know, listen, this is the issue, is that these charter schools can grow, unfettered growth within your district. They take students from our schools and put them in their schools. They're both schools that are funded by the state, so the state certainly isn't being efficient with their dollars. But we have a harder time. So we make commitments on our buildings. We own buildings. We have maintenance to buildings. We have all kinds of costs. We hire teachers and staff, and we have devices for students, all of these different things that we invest into, and then we lose students to a charter school, and that the flow of students out of our district lowers our revenue and makes it more difficult for us to keep up on our commitments. And in the end, it's like nobody wins, and the charter school performance hasn't been such that people should really be excited about pulling their students out anyway. The charter school performance in our district in this area has been much worse than what our district has on MCA performances. And to me, to just allow unlimited growth of charter schools within any district is harmful to that public school district. So this resolution here is asking that the legislature would determine and set a level of saturation in any school district for which no more charter schools would be approved within the district boundaries. And all that's, I think, we asked for it to be, last year we had asked for that to be like 15% of your district's student enrollment is enrolled in charter schools, that they would build no more charter schools within your school district. And throughout the state, most districts have no charter schools. the vast majority have 0 charter schools and 0 competition. But the ones who have charter schools have several charter schools and massive competition. And it just seems to me like they should want to put some kind of a barrier, some type of a break on the growth of charters within those school districts, because it truly does destroy the revenue for those school districts and make it really hard to operate. Puts them in financial binds. So this one, this resolution is asking for MSBA to ask the legislature to determine and set a level of saturation in any school district for which no more charter schools will be approved within a district boundaries. And I think this would be probably the most significant of all of them that we had last year. And this way here, I can go there and we can keep the issue at the front and center. I have my doubts because when you go to these conferences, as I said, the vast majority of school districts in the state, they're not concerned about charter schools because they don't have any charter schools to deal with. And they look at this and they just, again, they kind of look at it with the attitude of, oh, you're just against open enrollment or you're against school choice. And that isn't the case. We're trying to protect the assets and the foundation of our school district. And hey, guys, once charters start opening up in your school district, you're going to have a different attitude also. So I would like to do this one. Not like I said, I have my doubts whether it would pass. It would be great if it would, but I have my doubts whether it would pass. But I still want to keep the issue front and center in front of the MSBA and in front of all of the delegates and school boards statewide.
Good. Any comments on that at all? Monica?
So what were the other ones, all the other ones that we had? So this one is to limit the number of charter schools. And the other ones that we have was one for transportation.
Yep, one for transportation. One was to have a standard where they would close any charter schools that did not meet or exceed the local public school district standards or I got to think on this. The one, what else did we pass? There was 2 that we passed.
Yeah, what do we pass?
Transportation alone passed, right? That was. Reporting deadline. Yep, the reporting deadlines for transportation. Yes. And that was a big one too. There was a request for them to review the OLA standards, or the OLA report.
And they said no. They proposed that one.
No, that one is part of the MSBA legislative platform now. So that one passed. So those 2 passed. One of them I withdrew, and the rest of them failed. And this is one of them that failed, that I'd like to bring back.
So why don't we tie, I'm just kind of trying to play devil's advocate to see what would be the downfall of it, the argument. Because we're just saying to limit the schools because we're losing revenue. So people can argue that we're not that good. So that's that we just wanted to close others and have kids to go to a shitty school, which is not the case. I kind of looking for an argument within a position that validates our standing, that argues for the harm that is happening to us, but also that shows that there is. I mean, it's I'm looking more in the whereas part.
I think it damages us, but it costs the state more to fund a charter school in the long run. Would that be correct, Al, that because of how money is spent and funded and allocated,
You're taking one school system and turning it into two. One is very organized, reports to the Department of Education, has all kinds of standards in place, and the other one is feral cats that are just out there doing whatever they want to within their schools, and they're not performing up to the same standards.
and the money for the buildings is questionable.
The state pays for the cost of their buildings. Whereas the state doesn't, it's local with public schools.
Heather?
I mean, to me, at the heart, it still goes back to the standards. You know, like, we are held to, public schools or public non-charter schools are held to a certain standard. I think the argument would be different if what we were seeing is charter schools that were being developed to meet one of the intended laboratories for learning, and they were demonstrating that they were achieving I mean, I go back to it, it's the one that continues to move forward, is the legislature has 31 years of information. It's time for them to review and make adjustments to hold schools accountable, as opposed to just approve whoever puts things forward. And ultimately, yes, it does hurt mostly urban public schools, because that's the place where you're going to most likely see additional options, or people, enough of a population who they're actually going to try and organize something loosely. But it still goes back to the standards, is where is the accountability, and where's the accountability? They don't have the same reporting standards. They don't have the same, I don't even know how their boards work, or who they report to, and those sorts of things. Like, they're getting public money with essentially not the same level of accountability as public schools. That, to me, is what makes no sense.
Yeah, and I think that the accountability should be, yeah, I think that that's kind of the point. The accountability part should be mentioned in some sort of the whereas that we don't have here. Do we have here?
First of all, I really thank everybody for working on these. The first two are really great. I'm really proud of them, especially because I didn't have to do any work except for just be on the board. So I'm super proud. Way to go, y'all. I'm concerned about this one. I think the issue, yes, definitely needs to be in front. I agree, especially in front of MSBA. I'm concerned about the school, since school choice is such a hot topic and continues to be, that these percentages might not get at the heart of the issue, which is really, like you said, Heather, the oversight and unaccountability. I don't have a plan for how to solve that, but I'm just saying that I think that's the main thing that we're all here, that we all agree with. The other question I had was about transportation. What was the transportation one that passed, and was it about how we have to pay for charter schools' transportation? Is that the one that passed?
The one that passed was the one that was asking to move the date.
Right.
And set boundaries, yeah.
That addressed the fact that we're paying for that. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that one.
Right, it may not have
Okay.
completely addressed the funding yet, but boundaries is a step in the right direction.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure we were still talking about that, because that's one of the most unfair things, I think, for us.
Al, you said that two passed last year.
Yeah.
The second one was the one about more accountability or
Yes.
review and oversight. So process-wise, can you reset? Where is that at? So you said it passed. Then what happens?
Then it gets included in the MSBA legislative platform, and it stays there. So it's there now. So we don't need to re-bring that one back this time. It's part of.
It stays there, and then
that's why I went back to the ones that we didn't pass last year.
Right.
And it was like, I'm going to pick one of these.
Well, and that's my question a little bit is, and I don't know process, and you're an expert on that, but is there a way to try and, instead of submitting another one, if really the second one that is also in the platform, so to speak, is there a way to try and increase the priority of that so that it moves forward or gets more attention, as opposed to, I'll call it watering down, but bringing another, and again, this is a process question.
I don't know of any way to do that in this process. I mean, I don't have to bring one on charter schools. I just kind of felt like the one is in their platform. If they get asked questions on, what is your stance on charter schools or whatever, that's what they're going to pull up, and that's what they will use for their lobbying effort. And that one was the one to revisit the Office of Legislative Auditor report, which went through a whole bunch of different characteristics of charter schools where they were failing or not meeting the standards, and that the legislature needs to develop some legislation to address those concerns. But I can't bring that one back again this year.
And I guess my question is, if that one was moved forward and it was acted upon and the legislature and the auditors did their job, do you feel it would negate the need for this? I mean,
Yeah.
would it?
Yeah.
And that's, so I know you don't have, there isn't a process by which we can emphasize that. I'm just trying to think about that, because that's ultimately what we want. We want the standards to be addressed. We want the auditors to go back through and review and hold accountable public schools, including charter schools, to a uniform level. If there were a way to do that and instead of submit another one, that would just make sense to me. But if that doesn't exist, then that's a whole different thing.
What about putting it on our legislative platform?
Putting it on ours.
Yeah. As opposed to bringing it in this direction.
Yeah, we can.
I kind of get the watering down of question that you had. Like, that's an interesting thought. Natalie?
Yeah, I think that's what I was feeling, that you put words to it, that like, I don't want them to choose this one over the oversight. This one might be easier in some ways than the oversight one. It'd take less work. And if Minneapolis St. Paul's already at 20%, then like, are they going to kick some charter schools out? Like that would be a whole kind of nightmare if they set it at 15% and some are already over it. But I was going to say the same.
I didn't say that they had to be at 50. It said after 15%, they wouldn't approve anymore. So in
So they would be
Minneapolis at 20,
grandfathered
they
in.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
they wouldn't
It
approve.
just seems like this is treating a symptom.
I
The other
agree.
one is at the heart of fixing the problem.
But I like that.
Just let it be. I mean, I don't have to bring this, or if there's another issue that we want to bring forward that's totally separate from anything here.
But I guess the question is how to strengthen the other one.
How to strengthen it?
Yeah, so in lieu of bringing one new, how can we advocate for that to go there? Yeah.
We don't want to lose.
Go talk to them.
If we mess with it too much, we might lose what we have. But on the other hand, we should keep it on their, maybe this is a way to keep it to their attention.
I think that that's a point, because if their own legislative agenda gets too big, it takes away from the one that we have already passed. So in terms of a strategy for them, they should not have such a large agenda. So if that one is in the agenda, how we should be able to maybe pass a resolution ourselves to bring that forward and tell them this is a large priority.
Okay. Here's how I think that it works, and I could be way off. But I think nothing happened with that one last year because nothing occurred in the legislature concerning charter schools. So no one went to MSBA, no one pulled anyone from MSBA into their office and said, hey, what's MSBA's position on charter schools? If they had done that, they would have said, they would have gone to their little legislative platform, a book, and they would have said, here's our position on charter schools, and we'd like for the legislature to go back to the OLA report that was done many years ago, and we'd like them to address the issues that were in there moving forward. But unless something occurs in the legislature, I don't think MSBA is going to run down to the legislature and say, hey, charter schools, you know, we need something on charter schools. So I think their job is to to lobby for their position on bills that are moving through the legislature, not as much to write legislation. They could lobby for someone to write legislation, but I think once something is moving through the legislature, they'd be more likely to get involved and say, this is what we'd like to see, or from our standpoint, this needs to happen, or this needs to be changed, or, you know, I'm not 100% certain. Yes.
Well, and you know, that's what we've done with our legislative platform seems to get some attention. You know, we seem to move things through. So that's a great next step for us.
Well, in this coming session that's the full session again, right? Yeah. So if someone is going to bring it forward, and I think last time Eric and Bernie Perryman both said that they would do so, and in the end, neither made it happen on charter schools. But because that didn't happen, there was never any emphasis put on it, so there was really no reason for MSBA to get involved on it. That's where I think it's kind of stalled.
What's the other one that's the urban MSBA?
AMSD.
Yes. I mean, is there a way to partner with AMSD and because again, those are the schools that
Yep.
are more likely to face this issue. If we partner with them in some way, does that create a larger impetus or a larger voice?
Yeah, and I think that AMSD supported us on this last time, didn't they?
Both MASA and AMSD support it, but they get 2 or 3 issues, right? With unemployment insurance, I won't dare to forecast what else the other 1 or 2 they might pick, but the chances of this specific thing making it onto their legislative platforms, I think, is probably fairly minimal. But I do think that this board is on the right track, thinking about putting it on our legislative platform or reaching out to specific legislators to carry, because that's right. And then if we can get others to support us, all the better. But that's how we'll get it done, I think.
So maybe I should just pull this one back. And is there any other issue that we would want to bring forward for MSBA? I mean, I know it was suggested that one of them that we could bring forward would be the unemployment insurance, but that's already there, I think. So there's no need for us to.
Right. Okay. So we're are we all feeling the same way here? Is there, in that recap, that we're bring the third one in another direction?
Can I just ask another question? Ignorance is bliss. When you talk about putting it on our legislative platform, what is the process by which we do that? And who does that?
Yep, that's a good question. And I think throwing out there, just connecting with legislators, putting it on our platform, or just coming around to a different direction to continue the conversation. Zach, we have Zach's committee, and do we formally adopt that every year or every 2 years? A platform every year, around December, yeah. Yeah.
That's right before the legislative session. I wonder, would it be advantageous to do it a little bit earlier than that so that we could be get the legislative platform set and then get it out to the legislators prior to the beginning of the legislative session, rather than passing it right before the legislative session and then after the session has started, getting it to the legislators?
Ken, I'm lost. Are we looking for some kind of action to be taken on this?
No.
No, yeah.
I mean, passive action, whatever. I'm all for pushing this forward right now, and because if this is going to go to the MSBA conference, right, you're looking for
Yeah.
support. And that's in October?
December.
Not till December. Oh,
But the resolutions have to be in by September.
okay, so I would be in support of this, being whatever the action, informal, whatever. I'm support of this, rolling with it. Bottom line, we have to clean up the messes when charter schools fail, especially this district. So thank you for taking this fight on. I think this is great. So whatever gets it in their face sooner than later, I say we do that, and then we can add it to our platform. We usually waited till December because, well, of course, in even numbered years, we don't know who the legislators are going to be. So
But isn't that what we were talking about, Zach, is we've already got one from last year that is maybe the stronger substance-based resolution. And now we're talking about how do we actually make that, instead of just sitting as a passive piece of information that they have if somebody asks them, how do we create the catalyst so that the legislature asks? Just to me, submitting another piece of, or another resolution that maybe isn't as strong or is more about the symptoms than the actual issue, that just gets added to another pile, call it. I guess my question is, who do we need to talk to try and force action as opposed to have it just be on a list?
When do we know, so you have to submit them in September, they're discussed in October. When do we know whether that makes the cut or not?
December, the first weekend in December it's at the Saturday morning of the delegate conference. We all vote on them. So you stand up one at a time, you go through the resolutions, you read them, people get to stand up and make their comments on them, and then we do a vote. And
This is coming back,
this is coming back to next week's
meeting.
meeting, or the 2 weeks, next,
As an
this
action
month's
item.
meeting, whatever. And that would be an action item that would say, yes, the board will pass these unanimously. They changed, the one thing they did change this year is you used to be able, as an individual board member, you used to be able to submit a resolution. So if I wanted to bring a resolution saying that I don't like all the rest of my school board members, and or either I love all the rest of my school board members and I want to make sure we have a party every week, I could bring that resolution and present it. But this year, you can only bring a resolution that's been passed by your entire school board. So they're weeding out a lot of individual resolutions that we used to go through. Yes.
If we're thinking long game to our legislative platform, which am I right or wrong in thinking that we wait to see MSBA's platform before we decide ours? Or do we do it before they decide theirs?
They don't decide
Yeah.
theirs, we decide theirs.
Well, right.
Delegate, no, I'm saying that the delegate conference, MSBA doesn't create their own legislative
right.
platform. The delegate conference is where the school board delegates from around the state vote
Right.
and determine what MSBA's legislative
And that
platform
happens in
will
the
be.
beginning of December.
And that's the first week of
Okay.
December, yes.
If we're thinking about our legislative platform, what I wouldn't want to do is put this percentage, this is just me personally talking, on our legislative platform. I wouldn't want to put the percentage about charter schools plus read the OLA report and actually do something about this problem sort of a thing. Like I would just want one, like, do something about the problem. I wouldn't want to water it down. So if that's my line of thinking, then I think then bringing this doesn't make any sense for our long-term goals, unless we're wanting to put both of these on our own legislative platform, which seems to water it down to me. So I would just personally suggest that we just do those two and leave this one out for this year.
Okay, so do you guys want to vote on that? We're in a work session, so we're not voting right now. But is this something that we want to bring all three next board meeting, and then we're formally deciding whether we're bringing the third one? Zach?
So, just to clarify, would this be what you would want us to bring forth at the MSBA?
This would be a first draft of, I mean, I'm open to any changes.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, because I want to have it ready by September, right?
Yes.
Correct, okay.
But-
And that, I wanted to say, is very separate from our legislative platform.
Yes.
okay? The legislative platform is given to our local representatives once we know who they are after the election. So, and we can word it differently at that time too. We can shrink it down, we can make it more pointed, however we want. But I just want to clarify, I think they'd be separate.
See, part of my thinking on this is, yes, last year we passed the OLA one. And that was really important, and I think that's a great thing that passed, but I don't want it to get filed away and lost. And so I felt it would be important to bring back a charter school resolution to bring the issue back up in front of the whole assembly to say, hey, guys, we need some kind of limits put on charter schools. But it has to be a different resolution than the OLA one. It has to be a separate resolution, and it has to address a separate issue. But it's my way of doing exactly what you were saying. Yes.
Yep.
It isn't so much about this specific resolution as it is about bringing up a charter school resolution that, and forcing the delegation to act one way or the other. They can vote for or against, but to keep it front and center and front and center in front of MSBA also.
Monica, then Heather, then Natalie.
I'm there. I mean, I understand that the question is about a strategy. So my question about the strategy that you're suggesting is if the two resolutions will be competing. So if this one is competing with the other one, if not, I mean, if that's what Al is suggesting, that it would bring the topic up, I think let's do it. Elon, you're nodding.
I don't want to interrupt and speak out of turn, but last year we brought them both. So I read both of these. This is just a rerun of one of them that failed. So if it was competing this year, it was competing last year.
No, I hate the inefficiency of it. We already have something in that makes sense and is the stronger argument to me. I don't like that there isn't a process or, I mean, is there a list, like, where, I'm trying to think of similar examples. When I worked in Minn State, it was the facilities thing, and there was a list of all of the different facilities across all of the campuses that needed to be done. And it was in some sort of order, and each campus could determine what was their priority, and that still may not be the priority of the system, but you had the opportunity to keep bringing those up, and if something shifted because the facility was falling apart even more, you could potentially move it up. Is there a system, or, again, I get it. If it's just gonna, if last year's just gets lost in a pile, and this is the way strategically to reintroduce it, then we have to do it. If somehow there's a better way just to bring up the focus, then I just like the efficiency of that.
And the best way to do that would be to get some legislation introduced, which would force them to go to their legislative platform and pull it up. That's the secret. That's the secret. But how do we do that?
But I think therein lies the problem, because I don't know that as some legislators would want to touch school choice with a 10-foot pole, where they might touch oversight of charter schools. So I think maybe as I'm sitting here, I think actually maybe I don't really agree that maybe I don't really like this idea. And it's a very weird position for me to be, because it's not my usual leanings. It's kind of like school choice to me is, I understand the way it hurts us. Let me not go there. Let me just say that that's really a long dissertation. I think it is on us to then say to our legislators, we need your help with this, and it's on our legislative platform. I just don't see us being able to strongly say to most or some of our legislators, hey, do this percentage thing. I think that's a weedy thing where the OLA thing is not. This is my personal opinion.
Last part you said, right? Again, see, these are very two separate things. The OLA thing is an easy ask, right? You're asking the legislative auditor, hey, man, we all look into this. This is legit. We haven't done this since 2008. That was an easy one. This is the long game. This is more complicated. And if we don't keep the conversation alive and pointed, it dies real fast. So that's my read. That's why, yeah.
I'm probably a little bit more with Natalie in that, again, I like the OLA and the wording of that, because a little bit, so on the competitive side of my life and thinking, if you're talking about percentages, and I'm someone who's, and I'm the public who is for school choice, the conversation to me comes back to being, well, then District 742 just be better. And then people don't have to leave your district, or they don't feel compelled to leave your district. Just be better. I don't want it to be about the conversation about be better. I want it to be about the conversation about there needs to be accountability for all education that is being publicly funded. Charter schools are being publicly funded. This to me changes that conversation. The OLA says, we have an obligation and a duty as a state to hold all schools who are receiving public funding to a certain level, regardless of percentage of people. I don't want the conversation to become about what District 742 wants or what best positions us. I want it to become about what is in the best interest of taxpaying people and about the standards that we hold schools to for the betterment of our students, if that makes sense.
Heather's in my brain, I think, because that's like, I'm like, it doesn't feel good in my body. And I think it was because I know what the community, where it will come to, And it'll be about a conversation that we don't like or even need in our community, again, about us, which it isn't really even about us, but it opens a door that I don't want to open for us.
Okay, well, good conversations. Are we going to then bring all three of these forward at the next board meeting and make decisions one by one on these three? Is that what we're doing? Okay, sounds good. One more item tonight. We have one policy reading. It's the first reading for proposed revised board policy 704, which is development and maintenance of an inventory of fixed assets and fixed assets accounting system. This is very exciting.
How long do we have?
Hold on, Al wants to say something here.
Can I just back up 1 second? I
Hold on,
just
Amy,
want
here.
to tell you the 6 that I brought last year. The first one was to set the saturation level, percent of students from district enrolled in charters, to trigger a moratorium. That's this one, right? Number 2 was to revisit the 2008 Office of Legislative Auditor report. Number 3 was to hold charters to a standard of at least equal performance to district they're located in, if not a school improvement plan by MDE with inadequate improvement resulting in closure. We can bring that one back too. Number 4 was to request an increase in state funding or lease levy authority for public schools to equal charter schools, which is the level $1,314 per student. So that's this one here. Tonight we were saying 622. Compensatory funding to follow student re-enrolling in public school after October 1st currently remains with the charter school. Can't remember if that one passed. I thought so too. And then changing the opt-in date for charter schools from July 1st to May 1st to request public school transportation. Request increase in, no. Hold charters to a standard of at least equal performance to district they're located in, if not a school improvement plan by MDE with inadequate improvement resulting in closure.
Do you want Al to bring
I can bring them
those, the unpassed ones forward? Okay, and then we'll make a decision. Okay. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I can send out.
And then bring them. Okay, sounds good. All right, Amy, for an exciting close.
All right. Good evening, Chair Hawes, Superintendent Putnam, members of the board. This, I promise, should be very brief. This is really just a boilerplate policy that's utilized for our fixed asset accounting and reporting, which is used for our audit. It's only used for our government-wide statements, so it doesn't impact our fund balances or our operating budget. It's just that one set of statements that sort of converts school district accounting to more of a long-term business approach showing assets, debt, things like that. So the only change to the policy is in section 3. So there's a paragraph that's been added, and there's really 2 pieces to the paragraph. So the change to the policy is initiating because of a change in accounting principle, which now requires what they're calling aggregate assets to be considered fixed assets, accounted for, tracked, and capitalized within those financial statements. Previously, we would take an individual asset. So if you bought one copy machine, that one copy machine, if it's over $5,000, that is our capitalization threshold, gets added, tracked, recorded, and included as an asset in the financial statements. Now they're saying if you buy certain types of assets in the aggregate, such as technology and furniture, that you need to capitalize that as well. Nobody's super excited about this because the problem is things like technology and furniture don't tend to always stay together in the group that they're bought. A lot of times, specifically with furniture, we hold on to those sorts of things for a really, really long time. They're not disposed of all at once. And so there becomes some challenges and really some cumbersome reporting around this. And so what the auditors are recommending is that you set a separate higher threshold for these aggregate group assets. And so a number of districts have been looking at using 50,000, and so that's what we are recommending. So if in 1 year we bought $50,000 worth of classroom furniture, we would add that. And certainly most of our technology purchases are done in bulk, and those are typically purchased and disposed of kind of more in a group. But for furniture, we don't want every time we have to buy a new classroom worth of furniture, which, might be $10,000, to try to have to track that, add that, depreciate that, keep tabs on it, dispose of it. So that's really the reason for the change. In bringing up the policy to revise it to add that, I realized that the initial threshold of the $5,000 for individual assets wasn't actually noted in our policy either, and it should have been. And so the first couple sentences are just to establish what was already our practice and what we've used for years. So that is all I have, unless there's lots of questions.
Scott, did you have a question?
Yeah, is 5,000 enough? Should it be a little higher?
So we use $5,000 because that is what is required for federal purchases. And so to try to have two different purchases and decipher between when those need to be added and when they don't is more challenging than just using the lower threshold.
Okay, are we good? Thank you. All right, well, that is everything. Looking for a motion to adjourn tonight's work session.
So move.
That was a very enthusiastic and a second by Monica and Natalie. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
Excellent. The work session is adjourned at 8:48 PM. Thanks for watching. Have a good night. We'll be back August 21st. Good night.
That's okay. These chairs have seen quite a bit.